back from you in just a bit. Thank you very much, Bridgie. I've been talking about male grooming this morning. I just had John Froggatt in, who was telling me his fairly extensive routine at 63, dyeing his hair and plucking his eyebrows and all sorts. But one of the aspects I have been talking about as well is men turning to hair transplants because they're worried about thinning out on top, receding, and it's causing them a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. Sometimes, though, these can go wrong. I was speaking earlier to James from Pangbourne, who went to Turkey for an all-inclusive hair transplant package, and here's how he described what they did to his hair.
If you can imagine a hairline with hair sort of going in all different directions, almost like, I don't know, like an Action Man figure from the 80s or something. But yeah, so I was, it was incredibly emotional, and the holiday was spent panicking and thinking, what have I done? I'd been led to believe it would be a doctor carrying out the procedure, and as I say, it wasn't. And post the holiday, post that experience, I went online and actually did my research, which a huge piece of advice to listeners. I know I sound like a fool, but I was desperate. Do your research before you do anything. There's a lot of material out there. There's a guy called Spencer Stevenson, or Specs. There's an online forum, and you can find loads of information out there from that. There's a radio show called The Bald Truth. Again, I think Specs is on there, and there's another guy called Spencer in the US, and you can go on there and talk to them and get advice. Since that experience, I have rectified the problem. I went to the Harley Street Hair Clinic, which is kind of famous because Wayne Rooney went there, and I'm now very happy with the results. And it was £5,000, which is obviously like 2.5 times as much as I'd initially spent, but I'd wasted £2,000 in Turkey.
Yeah. And are these clinics popping up all over the place then? This is sort of luring men across to have this procedure done?
Well, I don't want to just badmouth Turkey per se. Possibly there are clinics out there that are working well. I would say, again, it's a question of research, but I think there is a huge problem with men suffering and a code of silence, and shame surrounding hair loss, which there shouldn't be. And in that desperation, you will jump at anything you think will rectify the problem, especially something that, again, £2,000 it is a lot of money, but it's something that people are willing to chuck on a credit card, because you are in a state, with my work, I can't be insecure. I've got to be resolute. And I was suffering, and, it was affecting my home life. It was affecting my relationship with my wife. It was, you could say it's vanity. I don't know, but it doesn't remove the fact that I was suffering.
That's James, who went to Turkey to have a hair transplant, and it went quite badly wrong. Spencer Stevenson is a hair transplant specialist in the UK, and he joins me now. Spencer, hello.
Oh, hi there.
Are you seeing a lot of this, men sort of trying to head off to various destinations to get a hair transplant on the cheap?
Indeed, I do. On a regular daily basis, I get many emails from guys who have been over to the likes of Turkey, and it's quite an epidemic at the moment because it's getting sold to them, that luring them in with regards to the affordability of it. And as your previous caller mentioned, it's very people are very desperate and they want to get this fixed, and they are prepared to go where the price is necessarily cheaper, but unfortunately the caliber of the surgery that is being performed isn't, because the surgery overseas in Turkey is being performed by technicians, and technicians that were trained by technicians, so the caliber of the work is very poor. And I see a high number of patients that are seeking repair. It is unfortunately, hair loss and hair transplantation is a hidden epidemic. There is a vast number of guys out there on a daily basis that are wanting to resolve their issues with regards to hair loss, and it's hard enough as it is. Never mind, having poor work done, because then they're in the tunnel, so to speak, and they can't back out and they have to move forward, and it doesn't necessarily bode well for them, because then they can have a lot of limitations presented upon them with regards to what is available to them, when if they come to a good ethical surgeon clinic to start with, their options would have been a great deal, there would have been a great deal more options for them, and the results could have been a lot more natural and better, and regardless of the price, if you know what I mean.
Well, James was saying there, do your research, that's the lesson he learned. But, I mean, how do you start? How do you know whether a clinic in Turkey is good or bad?
That's a really good question, because unfortunately, with the internet, there is a plethora of information out there, and it's very hard to know what is right and what is wrong. And I learned that the hard way myself. And it is a case of now there are really solid, good, reliable resources out there. You just have to find them. And I mean, I started out doing my role as a hair loss and hair transplant mentor through my own bitter experience, set up my own website, spexhair.com. But there are also, very well-known organizations and platforms to research. There is an upcoming conference, which is going to be quite groundbreaking, where two well-known established organizations, the International Alliance of Hair Restoration Surgeons and FUE Europe, are combining their forces to help educate patients and educate them in terms of whether or not they are eligible for surgery, because surgery is a last resort, and it's important that people don't rush in. They try to do their research. We do run a radio show called The Bald Truth, which hundreds of thousands of people tune into on a monthly basis to gain support, because there's an emotional aspect to hair loss which makes you very vulnerable and very desperate. And it's important that for these guys to know they're not on their own. There are like-minded guys out there that have been through this, like myself. I've had 13 hair transplants over the course of 20 years.
13.
So I've been there, done it, worn the T-shirt. And it's important that people get empowered and learn by people's mistakes like my own. But it is a minefield out there. There are a number of clinics that prey on the vulnerable still, and the industry is as unsafe now as it ever has been, unfortunately, despite the efforts of incredible organisations like the International Alliance of Hair Restoration Surgeons to protect and empower the patient.
Spencer, there's so much more I want to ask you, particularly about those 13 transplants, but I'm afraid I'm out of time. I've got to go to the travel. We'll have you on again, I reckon. Thank you very much for talking to me, Spencer Stevenson, hair transplant specialist in the UK.
BBC Radio Box.